I wanted him committed because he threatened to commit suicide
Yeah.
by the cops.
Yeah.
That I felt at that point he needed to be committed because because he's never talked like that. And, you know, I just knew he was just going down a path that
And because
wasn't going to return from.
And because Carol had told me about that is why I talked with him about asking him to see that these potential consequences were out there based on how he was psychically at that moment. He was clearly in crisis.
And so then the next thing is, I said, okay, he's going to go to sleep. I said, Michael, I'm going to go with David. I'm going to go down to court, and I'm going to fill out the papers. I'm going to have you committed because you won't come with us. You won't do anything. And I'm afraid that if you leave this house, you're going to have an encounter with the police because they've already had 2 encounters with you in less than 12 hours. I told the officer, you know, what you're threatening to do, although he wouldn't do anything. And so I went to his office and we discussed it, you know, what were my options, what should I do? And I didn't want to, but finally I agreed to sign the papers to get him committed. And so David and I went to the courthouse together and we filled out the papers because you have to have 2 people. So I filled out my part. David filled out his part and it was getting late.
So we talked in my office, probably as Carol just said, for about an hour. And she was struggling with this, you know, it was the last option. And, you know, at that point we weren't talking about the frustration with
You know,
the police officers not doing what the law clearly allows them to do. But we didn't really deal with that. For now, we've been told, so this is your option. Talk to the police officers, call the doctor. Now the only option at that point was an involuntary hospitalization. Nobody wanted to do this.
Yeah, reluctance.
Yeah, nobody wanted to do this. And so then when Chris, you know, said, I don't really want to go sign papers, I told Carol, I said, well, I have heard the things that he described to me. I've heard your recitation of what he said to the police officers and what she had said to you. I said, I've heard enough. I could go down and sign the affidavit along with what Carol was going to disclose as to what she knew. So it was probably a little after 3 after we'd have this conversation about what to do. We said, well, you know, we made a decision. Let's just go fill out the affidavits and try to get the court to order to enter a hospitalization order that would direct the sheriff to go pick him up and take him up to the hospital for assessment by a mental health professional. So we went over to the courthouse. Essentially, the legal standard for the judge to enter the order is whether there's cause to believe seriously mentally impaired, describes the condition of a person with mental illness and because of that illness lacks sufficient judgment to make responsible decisions with respect to the person's hospitalization or treatment, and who because of that illness meets any of the following criteria: is likely to physically injure the person's self or others if allowed to remain at liberty without treatment. So when somebody is saying, I'm going to get myself shot by a police officer, my belief is he's seriously mentally impaired. Okay? So we each went over, and Carol, it was a little after 3, I think, when we got there. We got the paperwork, you know, I said to Carol, the clerk's office closes at 4:30, so we've got a lot to say, you know, to recite the facts necessary to show that. So we're both, you know, writing out everything that we think is relevant to the issue of what's going on with Michael, his history of alcoholism over the last number of months, and then the psychotic behavior, the hallucinations, delusional thinking that he was articulating to everybody over here that day earlier, including the threat to shoot, to provoke a circumstance where the police would shoot him.
And so we got done about 4:20 and handed it in.
It was about 4:15.
4:15.
Sometime between 4:15 and 4:20. I remember looking at my watch and saying, okay, mine was done, Carol was done. I gave them to one of the clerks in the clerk's office there, and she said, well, the judges are all gone, so we'll present it to them in the morning. And I was stunned. Really? Yes, they're gone, so we'll present it to them in the morning. So we went out and visited, and I told Carol, I said, well, that's what we're going to hear. So, and I told her, I said, I will call Michael, because I had told him earlier, I'll check in with you. You give me a call, or I'll check in with you after you get some sleep. Carol went home. I went to my office. Michael didn't take a call. And I think, we talked the last time we met that I noticed I was in my office working that evening, and, around 8 something,
Okay.
a little bit after 8, then I saw one of these crawlers across
Yeah.
that there was an
Okay.
officer involved shooting. And I thought right away, oh
So-
my God.
So he didn't call. Did you did you stop by his house when you
Well,
came
yeah,
home, or
I talked to him and I said, you want to come?
you stopped on your way home from the
Yeah.
courthouse? Okay.
Yeah, and I said, you want to come home with me?
And you told him don't go out and walk.
Yeah, I said, why don't you come home with me tonight and just stay with me tonight? Because after David said, well, they probably now, doesn't sound like they're doing anything, that I was afraid that he would get outside of the house, so I asked him if he wanted to come home with me and stay with me again. And he goes, no, I don't think so.
Okay. So you stopped. You would have seen him around.
4:30, 4:45. And I said, you want to come home and stay with me? He goes, no, nope. And then he started talking to somebody in the corner. And I said, what are you doing? He goes, well, I'm talking to the maids. I said, what maids? He goes, who the hell do you think I'm living with? Those 3 maids. Can't you see all those green and white caterpillars all over the ceiling? He was just gone. I said, why don't you come home with me? And he goes, no, I don't want to go home. I'm not going with you. And I said, well, Michael, please don't leave your house then tonight. Just try to go to bed. I said, you had 2 interactions with the police today already. When you called, well, he doesn't think he called them, but anyway. He called them actually when I saw his cell phone 5 times that night. He called the Sergeant Bluff police. And then when I had talked to Officer Ward in the morning and told him what Michael was going to do, and he told me that he'd call me because he was sure he'd wander on some other property. And I knew what he said to me, that he threatened to make the police kill him. And he wouldn't come home, and so I left him, and he was dead like in an hour. And I just keep thinking that I should have made him come with, I should have stayed or something, and I should have done something different. But the police knew what was going on. I told them what was going on. I called the doctor. I told her that he was threatening to commit suicide by police, and we went to court and filed the papers. And then the funny thing is, the next morning the court ordered him to be committed. The judge ordered the sheriff to pick him up, and then somebody had to tell him, well, he's already dead. So then 2 minutes later, he had to rescind the order. So everything we try, or that they tell you to do to try to help somebody, did not do one thing in this. I mean, I did everything everything you read about you're supposed to do, and I just feel that, I would just hit a roadblock, everything I tried. And then and then for him to come over and tell me there was shooting, and as soon as he said it, I knew it was him. And then the police were so disrespectful. When I went over with David and Chris to try to find out if it was really him, and I didn't know if he was dead or alive. If he was alive, I wanted to be able to touch him and talk to him. And they just kept saying, no, we don't know anything, we can't tell you anything, and the hospital just, their same story, like, no, if you want to know something, call the police. Well, I'd already talked to the police, they wouldn't tell me anything. It was the worst, it is the worst thing you can imagine to happen, but you know, you think you did everything right, and then you find out that, nope. And so, I went to that hearing, because I just wanted them to understand that this impacted a family.
You're talking about last week,
Yeah.
the press
I
conference?
mean, I wasn't going to go, and then I thought, what am I thinking? Somebody needs to represent Michael. He wasn't a burglary suspect. He was a guy that wanted the police to kill him, and they did. And I told them that he was going to do that, so they had warnings and they had opportunities, but nobody took it.
Did you now you said the DCI came to your house that night after the state patrolman had come to inform you that Michael had died.
Yeah, we found out.
What did you tell the DCI? Did you
I told
share him
everything.
with all the, okay.
It started at 3 o'clock in the morning that the Sergeant Bluff police knew he was out of his mind because they called me. That I then called the police again when he threatened to commit suicide by a police officer, and that he would do something to make them shoot him. I said I called his doctor and tried to get her to direct commit him because I was afraid he would do it, and nothing, they wouldn't do anything. And everybody just recommended that I go get him court committed, and I did that, and apparently I was,
After
10
hours.
minutes, too late. And so nobody did anything. And then he did exactly what he said he was going to do. He walked across the street. He wasn't a burglar. He did what he needed to do to get them to kill him. And I watched the tape. I won't watch it again, but when I looked at the tape, I mean, I don't even think he had shoes on. I mean, he was not in reality. And he wanted them to kill him, so they just assisted him. And that's why I put in that obituary that he died of suicide, because he told me that's what he was going to do.
As far as being in the trailer park, did he know the
He'd
people
never been in
where
there.
he was outside the trailers?
No
or
business over there.
Okay.
Never.
It's just right where he walked out and went to. The house is just directly across the street from it.
He just went out so they would kill him.